You're thinking of going to grad school for psychology, but you can't decide whether to do online or in person. Let's break it down, because trust me, there's more to it than just pajamas or pants. I know, shocking. Dear future therapists, I'm Gabriella and welcome to my YouTube channel. So as you already know, I'm a full-time grad student in a master's program for clinical mental health counseling, and I'm enrolled in a fully online program. That said, there are some elements of the program that are in person, and I'll get to all of that and the details of my program and how it's set up. But first, I want to dive into this question of whether to do it online or in person. When you're making this decision, a few things you should definitely consider is whether or not the program you're interested in even offers an online option. Thanks to COVID-19, a lot of universities now offer online programs. So universities you would assume that don't, like Harvard University has Harvard Extension Online, Northwestern offers an online program, Pepperdine offers an online program. The online universities of today aren't just some Trump university scams. You'll also want to consider accreditation and licensure requirements in your state, the networking and practicum or internship access that these programs offer, and what your personal learning style is. Even though my learning style leans more to being in person, I was really surprised at how well the online format worked for me. As someone who got my BA on campus and had the whole college undergrad experience, it wasn't particularly important for me to have that experience again. So I had a whole different set of priorities this time around, and we'll get into all of that as well. One of the major pros of going to grad school online is the flexibility. The fact that you have access to programs all across the country, you don't have to relocate, you don't have to commute, you don't have to get a weird ass roommate. Also, it's the only program where your dog is welcome and your fridge is classroom adjacent. So another pro of going online is the accessibility. So whether you have a disability or a child, not that those are in the same category, or family obligations that make it difficult for you to leave the house every day or a few times a week for school. Then of course there's the financial aspects. And by that, unfortunately, I don't mean that the tuition is cheaper if you go online than if you attend grad school in person. For all of the programs that I looked at, the tuition was exactly the same. I know it's a tragedy, but that's how it is. However, you are gonna save money on commuting or relocating, and there's no fighting for a parking spot with that guy who drives a lifted truck for no reason. Another benefit to doing grad school online is that it naturally prepares you for the tech aspects of doing telehealth. I don't know about y'all, but I've actually only done therapy online or over the phone. So if you're someone who is like not particularly savvy on Zoom or using technology in that way, grad school will definitely prepare you to get more comfortable doing things in a Zoom setting. And that provides not only a lot of flexibility for you and your future career, but for your clients. So it's a great way to get comfortable and get used to just being in the online environment and getting comfortable with, not forgetting to unmute yourself and accidentally leaving a cat filter on your screen. It also trains you to have better online etiquette, which is pretty critical when you're treating a client who may be experiencing a mental health crisis. And while I could definitely go on and on about the pros of the online experience, and I probably will in future videos, I am very biased. So let me jump into some of the cons of doing grad school for psychology online. First off, Zoom fatigue is real. It is difficult to stay in one place and stare at a screen for hours on end. All of my classes so far have been limited to a 2-hour time frame, and usually we do some kind of little break or stretch break within that time frame. But anything beyond 2 hours for me, I don't think would be doable. Another thing is the limited in-person connection with peers and faculty can be difficult, especially if you're someone who really values that opportunity to kind of engage and connect and debrief about lectures with other people in your class. There are ways to work around that. My cohort in particular, we have a group WhatsApp thread, so that's kind of where we go in, ask questions, provide support for each other, and we're a pretty tight-knit group, so it's proven to be very valuable. So that's kind of how I get around that not having access to your peers in that networking space. And going along with that, it can be a little more tricky to get in touch with faculty when you need them. Whereas in an on-campus or in-person experience, you can visit a professor during their office hours. In the online setting, it's more like email your professor, wait 3 days, and hope for the best. And in their defense, I can only imagine the email fatigue they must go through from answering the same question from 20 of your students. Another thing is, depending on where your online program is based, your program might be more oriented towards talking about the licensure requirements of the state within which your campus is located. So for example, there are people in my cohort that are from Kentucky and Florida. I live in California and my program is based in California. So within the classroom setting, we're mostly focused on the licensure requirements in California. Now, thankfully, we have professors that are really knowledgeable about different states, but for a lot of these students, they have to do their own homework and research in terms of figuring out requirements of the state in which they are actually based. When it comes to clinical psychology programs in particular, I don't think it can be understated the value of having the in-person experience when it comes to role play and working on your counseling skills. There is something completely energetically different about having a person sitting right in front of you, 3 or 4 feet away from your face, versus speaking to someone through a screen. Fundamentally, becoming a psychotherapist relies so much on establishing that connection with your client, which for a lot of people is difficult to do through a screen. And that, I would say, is probably the biggest downside of doing an online program. But here's the good news. So a lot of these programs have some sort of a hybrid element to them. My program in particular has 2 in-person residencies, and we do 4 to 5 days of intensive in-person training. So during that time, we get to practice our counseling skills in person, face-to-face. We practice group counseling skills. We listen to lectures from PhD students and licensed professionals in our fields. And we also have an opportunity to just bond and network and get to know our fellow cohort members. So I was going to go through the pros and cons of the in-person experience, but I feel like I kind of captured all of that discussing the pros and cons of the online experience. I will say, however, that when I was researching my program, I did discover that some hybrid programs exist. So if you're really hungry and craving more of that in-person experience, definitely look into those programs. It just varies from school to school. As someone who is definitely an in-person learner, somebody who's very hands-on, I'm an extrovert, all of that stuff, I have really enjoyed the online experience. I was really hesitant to do an online program because I was worried that I would miss that ability to connect with people in my cohort and to really feel present in my class. I was worried that I would just like zone out and not really be engaged in lecture, but that has not been my experience at all. In fact, it's been the opposite. I feel like I've become so close and connected with my cohort members, especially because we have our little group threads and group chats outside of class. And also most of the curriculum is very experiential. So there's a lot of engagement, there's a lot of class discussion, there's a lot of practicing skills online with each other. There's a lot of time for breakout rooms where you can connect with your cohort members in smaller groups and you dissect case studies together or you do assessments together. So there's a lot of different ways to be able to connect and engage even in the online setting. And the last thing I want to mention, although I touched on it briefly earlier, is the whole practicum and internship site experience. So even though I'm in the online program, my practicum and internship will be in person. I feel like I was all over the place in this video. I hope it was helpful. If it was, please do all the things like, comment, subscribe, especially if you want to see more content like this. Dear future therapists, good luck out there, y'all.